He just got sort of pushed into the mechanic position, and I don't think he's genuinely enjoyed it. He's done the job to earn money to make a living.
Either fix that, repair it, do it cheaper, find it off from a different car, or sometimes you do have to bite the bullet.
When Jeremy Clarkson finally got behind the wheel of Mat Armstrong's rebuilt Bugatti, nobody knew what to expect. After months of painstaking work, countless challenges, and a remarkable transformation, the once damaged hypercar was finally ready. At first, everything seemed to go as planned. But as Clarkson pushed the Bugatti harder, his reaction revealed just how impressed and surprised he really was. So, what happened when Clarkson finally drove it? Let's uncover the moment. Jeremy Clarkson's ultimate test. On a quiet Tuesday morning at a remote airfield in rural England, an unusual meeting reportedly brought together two very different figures from the automotive world. Beside a satin-silver Bugatti Veyron stood Mat Armstrong, the self-taught mechanic and YouTube creator known for rebuilding damaged supercars. Facing him was Jeremy Clarkson, one of the most recognizable voices in automotive journalism. What made the meeting so interesting was the car itself. This was not a showroom-fresh Veyron supported by Bugatti specialists. It was a heavily damaged machine that had faced serious mechanical problems and been rebuilt outside the manufacturer's traditional service network. For Mat, this was more than another restoration. It was a chance to discover whether his work could survive the scrutiny of someone with decades of experience testing extraordinary cars. Clarkson had driven factory-built Bugattis and spent years discussing their engineering and performance. His reputation meant that his reaction could carry far more weight than an ordinary test drive. The encounter was reportedly kept private, without a large production crew or obvious television setup. Instead, the attention was placed on the Veyron and Clarkson's experience behind the wheel. Mat had installed a small camera inside the car, capturing the drive from the driver's perspective. Then the moment arrived. Clarkson climbed into the rebuilt Veyron, started the engine, and drove onto the empty runway. As the engine roared across the airfield, Mat could only watch his creation disappear into the distance. For someone who had personally repaired the machine, those minutes must have been filled with uncertainty. Would everything work as intended? Would Clarkson discover a problem Mat had overlooked? Most importantly, could the rebuilt Veyron genuinely perform as it should? Clarkson was not there merely to admire the restoration. He was there to test it. And once the Veyron disappeared down the runway, the real test finally began. Jeremy Clarkson decided to put Mat's rebuilt Bugatti Veyron to the test by driving it himself. But did his validation or criticism really matter? What could influence his opinion of Mat's work? And is Mat's effort enough without Clarkson's verdict? Let's uncover the interesting details. Why Clarkson's opinion matters. Jeremy Clarkson's involvement mattered because of his unusual position in the automotive world. For decades, he has tested some of the fastest, most expensive, and most technologically advanced cars ever produced. Through programs such as Top Gear and the Grand Tour, his opinions reached audiences far beyond traditional car enthusiasts. That reputation created a fascinating contrast. On one side was Bugatti, a manufacturer associated with extraordinary engineering, exclusivity, and factory-backed expertise. On the other was Mat Armstrong, a creator who built his reputation by taking damaged vehicles and attempting to restore them himself. For years, the automotive world has placed enormous value on official service histories, specialist technicians, genuine parts, and manufacturer approval. For collectors especially, provenance can be almost as important as the machine itself. That created a difficult question surrounding Mat's Veyron. Could a car rebuilt outside the official system still perform like a proper Bugatti? Mat had already demonstrated his confidence through his work. But confidence from the person who rebuilt the car is one thing. Independent validation from someone like Clarkson would be something entirely different. That is why the test drive carried so much potential significance. Clarkson was not simply another viewer watching a restoration video. He was someone capable of judging the car based on experience with high-performance machinery. And there was another reason his reaction mattered. Clarkson has never been known for giving automatic praise simply because someone worked hard. If something is disappointing, he has a reputation for saying so. If something surprises him, audiences tend to notice that too. So when he reportedly agreed to drive Mat's Veyron, the question became much bigger than whether the car could move. Could Mat's work survive the scrutiny of one of the world's best-known automotive critics? The answer would not come from the workshop. It would come from the driver's seat. And that was where the pressure really began. Clarkson's validation or criticism mattered because of his decades of experience testing some of the world's most advanced cars. But was Mat truly confident in his work? Or was he nervous about what Clarkson might say? And what was Clarkson's reaction when he finally returned with the Veyron? Let's find out. The moment of truth. Once Jeremy Clarkson took the keys, Mat Armstrong could do nothing but stand back and watch. The Veyron fired into life, and within moments, Clarkson was guiding the rebuilt hypercar onto the runway. This was not meant to be a slow, careful demonstration. The purpose was to find out whether Mat's restoration could handle the demands of a machine as powerful and complex as the Veyron. Acceleration, braking, steering, stability, and the car's overall response would all reveal whether the rebuild was truly ready for serious driving. For Mat, every second carried enormous pressure. He knew the work because he had personally taken the car apart, repaired damaged components, replaced parts, and fought through problems that could have stopped the project completely. Yet technical knowledge could not remove the doubt now building in his mind. As Clarkson disappeared around the airfield, the sound of the engine gradually faded. Mat was left waiting, listening for the Veyron to return. Each passing moment created another question. Was everything holding together? Had the repairs worked exactly as planned? Could Clarkson uncover something that Mat himself had missed? Those were questions no workshop demonstration could answer. The Veyron needed to prove itself on the road, under real pressure. Eventually, the engine note returned. The car appeared in the distance, slowed down, and rolled back toward Mat. Then came the moment that made the entire encounter even more intriguing. Clarkson reportedly did not immediately climb out with an excited reaction. Instead, he remained quiet. He stepped from the car and slowly walked around it, studying the machine he had just driven. He looked carefully at the bodywork and appeared to take in every detail. For Mat, that silence may have been more uncomfortable than criticism. After years of work, he was standing beside his rebuilt Veyron, waiting for the verdict. Interestingly, Clarkson was able to drive the rebuilt Veyron safely, but he remained unusually quiet after returning. Would he eventually reveal his true opinion of Mat's rebuild, or did his reaction already say enough? And would Mat rush to publicize this defining moment, or wait for the perfect time to reveal it? Let's uncover the details. Clarkson's silence after the drive. The most intriguing part of the meeting may not have been Clarkson's drive at all. It may have been what happened after he returned. According to the reference material, Clarkson stepped out of the Veyron and spent several moments quietly examining the car. No obvious television cameras were surrounding him, no presenter pushing questions, and no production team waiting for a dramatic soundbite. It was simply Clarkson, Mat Armstrong, and the rebuilt Bugatti. That made Clarkson's reaction even more significant. After years of restoring difficult cars, Mat Armstrong had one of his biggest projects tested by a motoring veteran. But the footage was reportedly kept private, leaving many wondering why it wasn't released immediately. The reference material presents one possible answer: strategy. Releasing the footage as an ordinary video could create a huge burst of attention, but that attention might eventually fade. Connecting the recording to the wider debate surrounding independent repairs and manufacturer control could give it much greater significance. Still, an important distinction remains. Even if Clarkson had praised the Veyron, one test drive could not prove that every independently repaired hypercar is safe, or that manufacturers are always wrong to reject outside repairs. What it could demonstrate is something narrower but still important. A heavily rebuilt Bugatti had reached a point where an experienced automotive figure was willing to drive and assess it. That alone could challenge assumptions about what is possible outside the factory system. Beyond Clarkson's test of the Bugatti Veyron, could his reaction influence Mat's ongoing projects? Could the unfinished Bugatti project be the reason Mat kept the meeting and Clarkson's reaction private? And how much effort does Mat usually put into his ambitious rebuilds? Now, let's dive into the impossible rebuild that changed everything. The Bugatti Chiron gamble. Mat Armstrong built his success around a straightforward formula: find damaged supercars, rebuild them, and turn the entire process into engaging content. The real value was often not the finished vehicle, but the story of bringing it back to life. Viewers watched as damaged Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, and other expensive cars were transformed, making the videos both entertaining and educational. That success allowed Mat to take on increasingly difficult projects. Then came the Bugatti Chiron Pour Sport, and the challenge changed completely. This was not an ordinary damaged supercar. The Chiron was an exceptionally rare and technologically advanced hypercar, and the example Mat acquired had reportedly been written off. Restoring it would require far more than determination. Bugatti also refused to provide parts, technical assistance, or factory support. From the manufacturer's perspective, the concerns were understandable. A hypercar is subjected to extreme forces, and serious damage to its carbon fiber structure can raise major safety concerns. Mat chose to continue anyway. As the project grew, however, so did the financial risk. What began as another ambitious restoration became a much larger commitment. Then, Mat added an expensive custom body kit, pushing the project even further. At that point, the goal appeared to be about more than simply making the Bugatti work. It became a challenge to prove that a car rejected by the manufacturer could be transformed into something remarkable. That made the project fascinating for viewers, but it also created an important business question. Was Mat making a smart investment, or was he spending heavily because the project had become part of his identity and his content? This is where Clarkson's perspective becomes especially interesting. The question was not simply whether Mat had the technical ability to rebuild the Chiron. It was whether continuing to pour money into such an expensive project made financial sense. The distinction is crucial. A difficult repair can be an impressive achievement, but an impressive achievement is not automatically a profitable business decision. And the Chiron was beginning to prove how expensive that difference could become. Aside from Clarkson's test of the Bugatti Veyron, Mat had invested heavily in his Bugatti Chiron project, which was being followed by millions of viewers. But how much could Clarkson's reaction influence public interest in that ongoing project? Could his verdict strengthen the case for independent repairers, or support manufacturers' argument that only their specialists should handle such complex cars? Let's find out. Why Mat kept Clarkson's reaction. If the footage were as important as the reference material suggests, releasing it immediately would have been the easiest option. But the argument presented is that Mat understood the value of timing. A major celebrity driving a rebuilt Bugatti would naturally generate attention. But internet attention moves quickly. A video can become enormous one day and almost disappear from public discussion shortly afterward. That is why the timing of a release could potentially change its impact. The reference material connects the footage to wider arguments about independent repair, manufacturer control, and the difficulty of working on modern hypercars outside official networks. That creates a much bigger narrative than simply asking whether Clarkson enjoyed the Veyron. The central issue becomes trust. Who should be allowed to repair extremely expensive vehicles? Should manufacturers have complete control over specialist repairs? Can independent experts safely work on cars that were originally built under factory conditions? And where should the line be drawn between genuine engineering concerns and restrictions created by an exclusive automotive industry? These questions are far larger than Mat Armstrong. They affect collectors, independent repairers, manufacturers, insurers, and owners of high-performance vehicles. Clarkson's involvement, therefore, adds a fascinating human element. He represents the traditional automotive world, while Mat represents a newer generation of creators who build their reputations online rather than through established automotive institutions. That clash is what makes the story compelling. However, it is also important not to overstate what a single video can prove. Even if Clarkson praised the car, that would not mean every damaged hypercar can safely be repaired independently. Likewise, if he criticized it, that would not automatically invalidate Mat's entire approach. The real value would be in hearing an experienced driver explain what he actually experienced. And that is precisely why the supposed recording has become such a powerful part of the story. Because the most interesting question is not simply what Clarkson thought, it is why his opinion mattered so much. Many believe Mat may be keeping the footage of Clarkson's reaction private for reasons that remain unclear to the public. But does Mat really have a strong case for repairing hypercars independently? How significant could Clarkson's reaction be to that argument? And could the YouTube empire Mat built over the years be affected by Clarkson's verdict? Let's uncover the details. A much bigger battle over Bugatti. The Veyron may have been the immediate focus, but the wider story reaches far beyond one car. Mat's projects had gradually moved from conventional supercar repairs into a much more difficult territory involving rare and extremely expensive hypercars. The Chiron became the clearest example. It represented the point where the old formula of buying damaged cars and rebuilding them began colliding with the realities of modern hypercar ownership. Bugatti's position was rooted in safety, engineering responsibility, and manufacturer control. Mat's position was rooted in technical confidence, independence, and his belief that damaged machines could be brought back to life. Neither side could simply make the other disappear. And that created a fascinating public debate. The question was no longer just whether Mat could repair a Bugatti. It was whether independent expertise could challenge a system built around factory exclusivity. The Veyron then became particularly important because it offered something the Chiron project could not easily provide: a finished example that could actually be driven and evaluated. That is where Clarkson's test drive becomes significant within the larger story. If the Veyron performed well, it would not automatically settle the entire debate, but it would give Mat something much more valuable than another workshop demonstration. It would give him an independent driving experience from someone with enormous credibility among automotive enthusiasts. And that is why the encounter could become one of the most interesting chapters in Mat Armstrong's Bugatti journey. The rebuilt Veyron was not just another car on a runway. It represented the meeting point between two very different automotive worlds. One was built around factories, engineers, official service networks, and decades of established reputation. The other was built around YouTube, independent repair, experimentation, and an audience willing to watch every step. For a brief moment, those two worlds reportedly met beside one silver Bugatti, and Clarkson was sitting in the middle of it. The successful Veyron rebuild and Clarkson's test could offer a glimpse into what Mat's ongoing Bugatti journey might become. But could Clarkson's reaction influence the much bigger battle over independent Bugatti repairs? And with the Chiron project still ahead, could this test determine how far Mat can take his challenge? Let's uncover the details. Mat's Chiron gamble and independent Bugatti repairs. The most intriguing part of Mat Armstrong's Bugatti story may be that the Veyron was never really the final chapter. Instead, it could represent the point where his ambitions became even bigger, more expensive, and far more difficult to ignore. The Veyron showed what could happen when a highly complex hypercar was taken outside the traditional factory system, carefully understood, repaired, and returned to the road. But the Chiron represents a completely different level of challenge. It is rarer, more expensive, and technically demanding, while also raising bigger questions about safety, manufacturer support, repair costs, and future value. That is what makes Jeremy Clarkson's reported involvement so interesting. Clarkson is not simply another famous person appearing in a car video. After decades of testing extraordinary machines, he represents a connection between traditional automotive expertise and the rapidly growing world of creator-led car content. If his experience with Mat's Veyron was genuinely positive, it could encourage people to question whether manufacturer involvement is always necessary for every complex repair. But if Clarkson discovered serious problems, his reaction could become just as important for the opposite reason. It could reinforce concerns about allowing independent repairers to work on highly sophisticated hypercars. Either way, the significance goes beyond one test drive. Mat had already placed his reputation behind the work. Clarkson's involvement potentially added another layer of scrutiny from someone with extensive experience behind the wheel of elite performance cars. And that is what makes this story so compelling. Mat was not simply trying to repair an expensive vehicle. He was challenging expectations surrounding who should be trusted to restore a machine built by one of the world's most exclusive manufacturers. The Veyron became the test of what independent work could achieve. The Chiron became the much bigger gamble, bringing greater financial pressure, technical challenges, and public attention. Ultimately, this story is about ambition, risk, expertise, and trust. Can someone operating outside the traditional factory system earn confidence comparable to the company that originally built the machine? The Veyron may have opened that question, but the Chiron could determine how far Mat's answer goes. So, what do you think about Clarkson's reaction? Could Mat be deliberately keeping the details of his reaction private? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.